Imagine wanting to pursue the American dream, and part of the American dream is wanting to buy a house. But unfortunately, it's not as easy for everyone, especially those from the undocumented community, to pursue this dream. While they technically can get approved for a loan, it comes with much harsher terms. It comes with a higher interest rate, a higher down payment, and a lot of terms that just make it seem impossible for them to buy a home. But I want to share the story of one of my friends who shares common experiences that the undocumented community faces. Her name is Brenda Rodriguez, and she is the executive director for the WA Immigrant Solidarity Network. Brenda's story is truly inspiring, so I hope you listen to this conversation, and to whomever's listening, I hope it motivates you to start that process. Hi, Brenda. Thank you so much for being here. Before we talk about this cool topic, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. A little bit about myself. I am the eldest in a family of immigrants from Mexico City and Veracruz. I came to this country at the age of 9 to reunite with my family who were already here. And I arrived to WAISN City, which is a rural and agricultural community. So I remember working with my family in the fields every summer. And because I was 9 when I came here, I knew that I was undocumented, and that was very much at the forefront in my mind. And I knew not to talk about my immigration status because that could potentially lead to detention and family separation. But I have been in this country now for over 20 years, and I get to call Pasco my home now. I purchased a home 3 years ago, and I live there with my dogs. And what I do, I have the privilege to serve in the Inatai Foundation Board, which is a foundation that is working to transform the balance of power across Washington state to bring equity and racial justice across the state and beyond. And I get to also co-lead as an executive director of the WA Immigrant Solidarity Network, which is known as WAISN in the community. And we are a powerful and diverse network across the state of Washington, made up of 400 organizations that is working to protect and defend the rights of immigrants and refugees. And really the bread and butter of what we do is we have a rapid response network, which is trained immigrants, refugees, and allies that are ready to mobilize whenever immigration, custom enforcement, ICE, o la migra, as our community knows it, when they're knocking at our door. And we then activate to fight against deportations to make sure that families like mine stay together.
Wow, you do a lot. And first of all, like, congratulations. You achieved something that a lot of people, especially undocumented individuals, seem like the impossible, right? Which is buying a house. And you working with so many people with that status, you kind of get to understand them in a deeper level, you know? Some people say, like, I can do it, and other people feel like they can't. How did you overcome that mentality to, you know, say, like, hey, I'm gonna get a house?
Well, I think it's a little more nuanced than just a mentality. For me, I am a recipient of deferred childhood. I am a recipient of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is DACA, which was enacted by President Obama after years of undocumented immigrant youth fighting and putting their bodies in the line. And it's important for me to say that because while I'm undocumented, and I say that I'm undocumented because I can still be detained and deported, I do have the privilege to have a work permit that comes with the Social Security number, which in many ways facilitates the process of buying a home. And I think starting the conversation with the question, can undocumented people purchase a home? The answer is yes, right?
Yes.
Whether you're a DACA recipient, whether you are an ITIN holder, you can purchase a home in the state of Washington. And home meaning a home or a trailer or property, right? Whatever that means for folks. For me, as an immigrant, I very much grew up with my parents always with the goal to just be here in this country temporarily. So we would talk about going back home after I finished high school, then college, and so on. So I never really got to see being here as my home, and that is something that I struggled with. And so therefore, buying a home was never really as part of my plans. And I also didn't know that I could purchase a home, even if that was my goal. And I was also working, and I didn't know. There's so much uncertainty with being undocumented, right? You're so much about, I'm here to work, to go back home. And there's always the lingering fear of detention and deportation, right? So for me, there was a lot of uncertainty about my future. Even though I have DACA, I have to renew it every 2 years. And I never know if I'm gonna get it approved, right? So planning long-term, like purchasing a home, was a big responsibility that just came with another layer because of my immigration status. So in 2020, right, in the midst of COVID, I got sick that summer for the first time, and I was...
With COVID?
With COVID,
Okay.
yeah. And I didn't know how my body was gonna respond. I got pretty intense symptoms. So I remember writing down like my passwords and my bank account information and like sending my mom pictures where to find things, right? Because I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen to me. And that was the first time that I really thought about death as a grown-up in a really present and real way. And for a lot of immigrants, right, when they die, they wanna be sent back home. So for me, thinking about what is it gonna happen if I die, I right away, I was like, I want to be buried here. This is where my parents, my siblings, my friends, this is my home.
Yeah.
So thinking about home in that way was also the moment that I really felt that, like, this is my home. I have been here for over 20 years now. I have built a life. Yeah. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that the Tri-Cities area is where I've been, right, for most of my life. So that combined with having some savings that I was going to use for travel that day, but that year, but of course everything got canceled, was when I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to buy a home. I don't want to keep paying rent. And I remember the first person I told was my boyfriend, and he was like, yes, you got this. I can help you. I can do some research. And then telling my family, and my family was very much on board, like, let us know what you gotta do and how we can help, right? So I really had the support and a network of people that were like, let's do this, let's make this happen. And then that's what really jump-started the process of buying a home. Like, okay, mentally, I wanna, cement my roots here, and I have people that have my back, and I have a job, and I have stability in a way that I don't know if I'll have in the future. So let's just make it happen. And that's how my journey started.
Wow, that is an intense journey.
Very much.
Oh my God. But I really like how you had that support from the beginning, right? Because to them, it's temporary. It maybe seem temporary. So I'm glad you overcame that. You said you had savings, right? How did you save money to buy a house?
Well, the savings were not intended to be for purchasing a home. I was planning on going to Puerto Rico and Miami and just, living life that year. But with the pandemic, everything got canceled. And so I had some money set aside, right? That every paycheck, I was like, okay, I'm going to set some money aside so that I can do the logistics. And it wasn't that much. Honestly, it was like $5,000. And I say that it's a lot of money, but it wasn't that much compared to how much sometimes is needed for a house, right? So I my first step, and I guess for me, I don't always know it all, but I know who to go to get answers, or get direction, right? So in this case, Marco was the person who told me the first thing you got to do is go speak to a loan officer.
Yes.
They will tell you exactly what you need to do to get you to buy a home. And that's what I did. I remember going to the banks where I already had established a relationship, like having a credit card or a checkings account, and speaking to them about like, hey, I want to buy a home.
Yeah. How was that?
And what made it not intimidating, again, was having somebody who knew.
Support.
Who had experience working at a bank. So, Marco sat down with me and was like, these are the questions that you got to ask. Here's what I pulled up online. So that was really helpful, right? Somebody who coached me literally through that process.
And he's not an agent, or
he's not, right? But he was somebody who knew and had friends, and very proactive about it, right? Because it was a really hectic time at work. So I remember thinking to myself, maybe this is not the time. I need to dedicate time and space. And my mind is thinking, how are we going to make sure that undocumented people are not left behind during this pandemic, right?
Right.
So he was really helpful and helping me and pointing me in the right direction. I think once I sat down and started talking to loan officers, it was really exciting. But what I found out through the process was that not all banks were loaning to DACA recipients, even if you have a Social Security. And the ones that were asking for a big down payment, right? So I was like, okay, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of getting a loan because I don't have a big down payment to give. And again, speaking through people that I knew, somebody referred me to a loan officer in Linwood, and that is the person that I ended up working with. And she had experience working with DACA recipients. So some of the barriers that I encountered were, again, not all banks were giving loans to DACA recipients. If they were giving a loan, it was a high down payment.
Right.
And high interest rates. So working with this loan officer was really helpful in trying to find the best deal for me. And that was the most stressful part, the finances, right? Like, how am I going to actually turn this dream of having a home into a reality? And once I got pre-approved, which was a huge relief, I didn't think I had the right credit. I didn't think I had the right, anything. And then it turned out that I got pre-approved, and then the process kind of sped up after that, right? It was like, okay, you got to start talking to a realtor. Like, we gotta start moving. So by the fall, I had already been pre-approved. I moved out of my apartment and didn't renew the lease. Family members opened up their home so that I could live there for free and save money to have enough for the closing costs.
Really?
Because I didn't qualify for first-time home buyer assistance. Because of my immigration status. So then I had to pay closing fees and just all this additional expenses that I didn't account for.
You were in a very competitive market too, huh?
Yes, very much so. And I just remember reaching out to my friend who was a high school friend, and she's a realtor with her husband, and that is who I worked with, and they were really good, and also breaking down the process of like, this is what a realtor does, this is what a loan officer does, and here's how to get you from A to Z, and this is the section that we're in. So that was really helpful, right? Finding somebody that I felt comfortable, that were bilingual, that had a similar background as me.
That's important. That's very important.
Which is why it's so exciting to have people like you be in these positions, right? You can be that person for somebody else.
Thank you. Yeah, it's much more than just the language. It's also the culture too. Understanding it, because I could tell you what's going on, but if I sense that you're nervous or scared, it's like, oh no, it's not what you think it means,
That's right.
It's really important to kind of have that connection, because I see a lot of people working with individuals who don't speak the same language, and I'm like, you don't, it's much beyond the language barrier.
That's right. I think you mentioned, the connection, and I think the patience, right?
Oh, absolutely, the patience.
Because we ask the same question in different ways, and there's a patience that goes with that. And I think for me, it was important. I ask a lot of questions, so I felt comfortable asking a lot of questions, and I was going to make a big decision. So for me, it was very much about I need to understand what I'm getting into and I need to understand this process. I don't care if the question seems dumb. I don't care if it seems like I should already know this. So I think people really, like, it is a big decision and commitment, right? Like 30 plus years that you're committing to this loan.
Right.
You better feel comfortable and
know the ins and
know the
outs.
ins and outs.
Yeah.
And surround yourself with people that know it. That's the other thing. I didn't know, but I knew who to go to, and I think that's really critical.
Absolutely. For someone who is watching this and is scared, right? They share a similar background as you. What words of advice would you give them?
I would say it's okay to have that nervousness. It's okay to have that fear, as long as it doesn't stop you.
Right.
I think, again, you don't need to know it all. You need to go to people who do, right? Whether it's a realtor, whether you want to go to your bank and speak to a loan officer. Go with somebody who's going to actually create a roadmap for you. Something that I see a lot, and I think this applies to many things in life, is that while I'm here talking about my experience, my journey was very different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we hear what somebody else's journey was and we just assume that that's going to be ours.
Yeah.
So go and speak to a loan officer and figure out what you need to do to get pre-approved and then go from there. And that honestly is the hardest part, right? Getting a financial institution to back you up. After that, it's the fun part, which is what do you want and choosing a home and floor plans and whatnot.
I want to make it easier for everyone. I think now knowing, being an agent and knowing the ins and outs, if I was in that position, what I would personally do is if you know of an agent that you trust, just tell them, because it's our job to do the research of the loans.
I love that.
Yeah, because at least that's what I do, because every season it changes, right? So one season a bank can offer this loan for individuals who have an ITIN number, and then the other season they won't.
That.
Some banks offer 20% down, right, which is the most common that you hear. Others offer 10, and even last year I heard of a 5%.
Wow.
Yeah, so I would say, don't be afraid to DM or message someone and just be like, hey, and just interview the loan officers and make sure you ask, and we can direct you and tell you, like, these are the questions that you need to be asking.
If you don't have a Marco in your life, go to a realtor.
Right.
For sure. I think that's amazing to know. Speaking to people that have purchased a home, in the last 3 years, also I get to hear about like, oh, now we do qualify for first-time home buyer assistant, or, and I think that's something to know, that the market is ever changing.
Absolutely.
And that a home, this was something else that I got to learn in the process, right? The business aspect of it, right?
Right.
It is an investment, but it doesn't commit you to that locality. For me, thinking about staying in Pasco for a long time was something that I wasn't too sure about because of my job, because I career choices and opportunities. So realizing that purchasing a home doesn't mean I have to stay here, right? I could do other things with it that can then help me continue to build wealth, was something that I didn't really was thinking about at the beginning, but that later on sold me even more, right? I was like, oh, this is a great way to invest my money, and especially for folks in our generation, I think that's something that if we're able to do, we should start to.
Yeah, because even if you let's say you went to Miami, right? And you're like, I want to live here. Within these 3 years, especially buying a house during the pandemic, your house has appreciated so much that you can take whatever you earned and then you can put it to the down payment to your next house, right? Which is the difference between someone who doesn't buy the house, right? And that's a lot of leverage that you have.
That's right. I thought about purchasing a home as something that would be very limiting, both financially and in my life. And what I've learned is that it's quite the opposite, right? It creates other forms of resources to be able to move and purchase property or move somewhere else. And it also helps build credit, and I've been able to get a car loan and other things, right? So again, like surrounding yourself with people that know it and that can address those particular anxieties that you have is really, really important, because I know what was holding me back is not the same thing that may be holding back somebody else, and that's important.
Awesome. Now that you're a homeowner, how is life? How is life for you?
Life is good. I love to have my own space. We were talking about this before.
Yeah.
I enjoy living on my own. I love to host. I have a big family and there's children.
Okay.
So having a yard, having a spacious place is something that's important for me. And I have 2 dogs, so being able to have the room for them to move around. And it's been fun to also decorate and figure out my own style, which I know I was sharing that it's taken me over 2 years to get there.
Right.
And that's something too that I wish I would have told myself at the beginning, like, figure it out, take it slow,
Patience.
pace yourself.
Yeah.
Because those are expenses that add up, right? Like
Right.
purchasing
Oh
a
my
couch is something that adds up if you want to change it in a year, or painting your home one color and then realizing that you don't like that and changing it to another. It's a
Right.
big expense. So I would say be patient and take the time in making that place feel like home. And yeah, it definitely is a part of adulting that I didn't think I was gonna enjoy, but I love my home, and I've had a really good time in the process too. I bought a new build, so getting to select the
that's
floor
amazing.
plan and all the details that I normally wouldn't think about I got to learn, and that was fun. But life is good, and I'm really proud of myself, and I couldn't have done it without my family and my support system that really, in those moments where I was scared or where I was getting cold feet, they were like, no, Ja, we made it this far, we got to get you to the next level, and that was really cool.
Well, congratulations, Brenda. You're someone that I look up to, and this is just amazing that you overcame this barrier. Where can people find you on social media?
For my work, folks can follow on Instagram and Facebook and all social media, the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, which is a great resource to know what is happening in the landscape of immigration and where undocumented people and refugees can access resource and information. And that's really through my work that I get to stay connected to people. So
Yeah.
follow us and stay updated.
Awesome. I'll put those links below. And thank you so much for being here, Brenda. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening and taking your time to listen to Brenda's stories. It's an amazing conversation. As she mentioned, she has DACA. She faces a lot of struggle that the undocumented community faces. The way she handled it, the way she was proactive about it, made her become a homeowner now, and she has equity, and she has a lot more options now. She's really someone who inspires me. Below, you can find her contact information if you want to reach out to her. I really hope her story has motivated you to at least reach out to an agent and just start having that conversation. Buying a home will not be an easy process. It is possible. I've made it happen before. And I just want you to make sure that you know it will help you get there. Hope to see you on the next episode.